Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to the podcast. And I think we are for now calling it the Curious Cast podcast. And today I have two managers, Francis and Abhi, with me. So the topic is managers' point of view, right? So the first thing that I wanted to discuss is it's a very cliched question. You guys both have been people manager in your current roles, right? So what do you think is exactly a people manager? Who do you think a people manager is?
Um, I'm going to start, but
Yes,
let's,
yes.
Abhi, feel free to pepper in. I think there's no job description for a people manager.
Right.
Essentially, people manager does everything that the employee to make sure that the employee is, comfortable. In some ways, to get out of the way of the employee as well, if that means the job, and in many ways, some of the stuff that the employee does not necessarily want to do, right?
Hmm.
So there's no real job description per se saying, hey, this is what the manager needs to do. But
Hmm.
typically there are in companies there are job descriptions saying the manager has had prior managerial experience. We don't know what that prior managerial experience is, but it is written in the job
Okay.
description. But then it also says that ability to work with teams, ability to hire, ability to have team meetings and have done performance management and all that, which is, I think, fundamental to a role. But then I think beyond that, it's everything that is expected of the team that
Hmm.
you think someone else is not going to do. The manager usually does it.
Oh, okay. So, Abhi, what about you?
I think on top of what Francis said, I think it's also expected that you run a highly, sort of motivated team. So one of the people manager, roles that is expected out of them is, to keep a team motivated and make sure that they are only focusing on things that matter, and other things that come up that usually go to managers uh, to do.
Okay.
Say for example, right, if say there is a a requirement where we have to collaborate with multiple teams on something, and by de facto the COE will absolutely go to manager and say, hey, need some help, and then we have to plug ourselves in and sort of drive that. But these are some aspects that a lot of people managers have to do. Not just in support role, but of many different roles.
Okay.
On top of what Francis said.
Yeah. So you guys become a bridge between for your associate and the other team, so that he has all the facilities to do his job well. That's what I
Yeah,
understand
Yeah,
from this.
yeah, I would
Okay.
say so. The only other thing
Okay.
I want to say is I know these are quick questions, maybe, but availability, being available most of the
Mm,
time is an important aspect of a manager.
right.
One of the things which is, again, to take your cue of a cliched question, one of the cliched statements a manager usually says is, guys, call me anytime. Call me anytime if there is an issue. Call me my mobile number, Slack me or whatever.
Mm,
Is a common thing that I think employees expect. Saying, hey, I want to just maybe call my manager to
hmm.
or get my manager into a call. So I think it's expected of a manager's role
Yeah.
to be available.
And what you just said about being available, and when you back your talk when the actual need is there, that's when I think the bond between you and your associates go further,
True.
because you say you call me anytime, but at that time okay, one or two times you're not available, busy on another call or whatever. But let's say if this becomes a pattern, then there's a discrepancy there, right? But this is exactly what you said,
Absolutely.
you have to
Yeah.
be available. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so do you guys have a prior experience? I know Abhi does. I'm not very sure about you, Francis, but you guys have prior tech experience as well, right? Or were you a manager
Long
since
time
the
ago.
beginning?
Yes,
Long time
long
ago.
time ago. So not
Okay.
lately, but
Okay.
yeah.
So
Mine
why
was
did
not
you switch? Okay, go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah,
mine was not so long ago. It was 4 years ago. I
four
did
years
have
ago.
some experience.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. I remember that. I remember
on
that. I think,
technical roles.
yeah, I was, we got to know that you came for a tech role, but you were so good in your managerial answers that people decided, oh no, this guy has to be a manager.
Yes, something like that.
Something like that. Yeah. So
As a
why did you
side
switch
note,
from, oh, yeah, go ahead.
as a
You
side
were
note,
there, I guess.
don't be too good in your tech role or don't be too good in explaining your tech role because
Uh,
you might get something else.
okay.
Sorry, Rama.
Okay.
Please go on.
Yeah. So when or why, I know when about you guys, but why did you switch from tech work to management? What attracted you towards, management?
Abhi?
uh, a lot of things. My first experience as a manager was a team leader in HCL Technologies, and
Mhm.
I wasn't directly managing them. It was mostly team leader, but I took it upon myself to coach them on the right things, especially the new folks, right? And I really
Mhm.
enjoyed it, and
Mhm.
I thought I had a knack for for doing that, because I really like to understand the person and sort of go deep into what they want out of roles and guide them on their careers. And so that was really fun for me. So I think that sort of attracted me. I thought it might be a good career choice for me. So here I am.
Okay. Okay. But did that
Yeah.
not make you a bit nervous because did you, okay, first thing, nervous part come later, but did you enjoy your tech work or are you
Yes.
enjoying management more?
I, it, uh, to tell you the truth, I think sometimes I miss the technical roles
Hmm.
because the career depended on me alone.
Hmm.
My performance, everything was dependent on me, on what I did, how I did it, and I had full flexibility to frame my career.
Hmm.
But with management, I do have flexibilities, but also there are times that a lot of things are not dependent on me, but on uh, whether the position is available, or whether what I want to do with my team it aligns with what what management want from
Hmm.
my team, stuff like
Hmm.
that. So I think to some extent, yes, it I some I do miss technical work, but I enjoy management more than well, I enjoy technical stuff.
Okay. All right. Go ahead, Francis.
Sure. So I think I had a similar, pathway as Abhi in the sense that, there was a team, there was a support team, and then there was a need to become a, team lead of the support team. This was like 15 years ago at a company called Credit Suisse.
Hmm.
Uh, I was a reluctant lead because, firstly, um, I was how to go from being a colleague and a friend to the team and becoming a team lead, right? Because
Yeah.
now you have to set expectations of the role to the team. You have to tell them, essentially, how they are doing. Also have difficult conversations if they are
Yeah. The equation changes. It changes
exactly.
drastically. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly, the equation changes. But thankfully, it was quite a compliant team initially.
Nice.
But still, I think for a long while, I was always questioning whether this is the right thing to do or not. But then
Right.
over a period of time, I've started, most of my interest and love for management came through mentors. You know, but because other people who I saw as managers, I used to approach them and say, "Hey, tell me how you manage your team, how you manage performance management, how you do weekly meetings, and all those things." So it mostly for me. I wouldn't say I'm a self-made manager, but mostly
Uh-huh.
I've managed. I've taken on good bits from lots of people. Especially, I had two good mentors in my past career. Um, what I'm learning, through many people I've learned from Abhi too, in the sense that, there's always good aspects of management from different people.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's been a while, so I don't know if I have the skills to go back to technology. So I don't miss technology that much. But to answer your second question about whether I miss being an individual contributor or technology, when I was a support engineer, doing
Yeah.
working on Linux and all that, I wasn't too good at it. I just, I just, I was able to manage the situation. I was mostly good at talking to customers,
Right.
talking to people and being like that nice guy kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so I think this was a natural segue for me, except that I was reluctant. I was so worried, similar to what Abhi was saying. Now your success is dependent on the success of your team,
Oh yes.
how your team, is effective and things
You
like
know
that.
that's motivating and scary both at the same time. That you also have to take care of your team, right?
Yeah.
So I heard this from a friend of mine who became a manager. Okay, we used to work together, I think, for some time, and he became a manager. And after a year or so, we had a conversation. So I asked him, what difference did you feel, and what changes did you think you made when you were in management, or what was your experience? So he mentioned that this guy had a conversation with a head, like he was like 3 4 levels up. So he was having a one-on-one with the head. I think he was the VP or something. So my friend told him, I don't think I'm making any good contribution, or I'm not making a big impact being in management, and it's already been a year. So that guy said, the first year is not for you to make the impact. The first year for you in management is to observe and learn how management works, what your actual job responsibilities are. You can't just be a great manager on day one, right? So don't be it's a patient job. You have to be resilient to learn what management is. You have to learn from other managers. They are very experienced, and just take 1 year and only observe. Don't worry about making an impact. The time will come for you to make an impact later when you handle big teams and whatnot. So do you think this made sense, or is it? To me it did, but I'm not a manager, but you guys are. So do you think this makes sense?
It depends. I think it makes sense that you can't be a manager on day one, because that transition from technical role to manager role
Yeah.
takes a mind shift. You need to change your perspective of how you see things. I think
Hmm.
that's. I think it's a good way to put that. You can't be a manager on day one, but I think 1 year is a big learning curve.
Big lemon, yeah.
I think, yeah, I think, I think you need to, as a manager, I think you need to be, you know, grasping things as quickly as you can and understand,
Right.
what is expected out of you quickly. And I think because as a manager, you have to start interacting with COEs and or engineers or your directs directly. It makes sense to learn quickly or have a mentor at that time and just get
Right.
your grasp on what is required quickly. 1 year, I think maybe some companies can afford that, but I think most will not be willing to wait for 1 year to learn your ropes.
Yeah, so I think from the statement that he gave, what he mentioned is he was able to perform basic responsibilities like looking out for the associates. Okay, you had an issue, let me do this. But he was talking about a personal impact that he was having on the org level, or at the or his team level. So he was not satisfied with that, because at a personal level, you solve a complex issue, that's a big impact, right, for the customers, for your team, for your managers and whatnot. But when you are a manager, to show your impact, you have to be, you're constantly struggling. There's no validation coming. What am I doing? Am I doing everything correct? So I think he's was going from at that point, from that point of view, he was taking all these things into consideration. What about you, Francis?
Yeah,
Is it?
makes sense. Makes
Yeah.
sense, Raman. Absolutely. I think it's going to take, I would say, uh, you go through different phases of
Correct.
understanding what it becomes a manager. So, in your first few years of management, you might be like a junior manager, and the way you think about it is you will want to really make an impact, but really the role expects most of the time, unless it's a startup or something like that,
Right.
where there's just 20 people or 30 people. In a fairly sizable organization, as the junior manager, there's not really much expected at the organizational level. But then, the manager would put amongst himself or herself saying, hey, what I'm doing is not making an effect at the VP level or at the director level.
Yeah.
But that's not really what's expected. Sometimes,
Oh, yeah.
it's about pacing yourself. It takes a little while. And then when you
Right.
get into middle management, you start feeling that, okay, now I think I can have a say in certain things. Maybe
Right.
I can
What
have
I
a
say
say.
matters. Yeah.
Yeah, matters, and then things like that. So as a junior manager, you want to make an effect, an impact, a positive impact in the organization. But really, what you're expected to do is to have an effective, motivated team, and continue to take care of the team's needs, training needs, and things like that. And you're right on the point that sometimes you don't get the validation as a junior manager, right?
Correct.
Because
Yes.
you don't see that. Like if you've solved a complex problem as a support engineer, you immediately close the case, or the customer says this is good, or maybe the customer sometimes thanks you.
Yeah.
That mostly doesn't happen, but yeah.
Okay. All right. So, do you think that people management is easier than the technical IT work that we do?
Um, I think there are two different things. They're apples and oranges, I would say.
Right.
Um, um, I'm probably going to be a little bit stereotypic here in our context, that there's an expectation, but I think this is largely changing with Gen Z and the millennial crowd. But when I started my career, there was always an expectation that after being a support engineer or a dev or an engineer for several years, you need to become a manager. That's the only growth. But I think that's
Yeah.
more largely now a different viewpoint from people, saying, people know that they can grow through their technical roles. So management is not necessarily for everybody, but I think the management aspect is challenging in its own, because there's lots of interpersonal challenges that you go through, which you may not go through as an individual contributor. So, for example, managing your team is one thing. Working with your peers is another thing.
Is another thing.
Managing
Yes.
upwards, managing your org upwards, because you're no longer just responsible to your immediate manager, but you're
Right.
responsible on behalf of the team. So there's a multiple um, faceted expectations that are set on
Right.
you. So that's a different kind of a challenge, I would say.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. What about you, Abhi? So, you'll be the perfect candidate because you shifted not too long ago into management for this question.
I think I sort of agree with Francis. They are apples and oranges, to be honest. I think for technical stuff, you need to deep dive into particular roles, and you have all the materials available with you. You can do that. But with technical stuff, you need to. I think I think it's more learn as you grow kind of environment. You learn new things about people. How to manage them, what their requirements are, and then sort of learn how to deal with them, or you can ask your colleagues who are familiar, and sort of go from there. But two different challenges completely. I think to be honest, in some aspect, I feel management is more difficult than technical stuff, because not so in technical stuff you have people you can fall back on, and there is a set of rules, like maths as 1 plus 1 equal to 2. Technology is always like that, sort of I compare it to maths all the time. But the management is not a perfect science like maths. So
It's a people skill.
that
Yes.
kind of makes it interesting, but scary.
Oh, yeah.
I've
Okay.
never thought of management
But
as related to mathematics. It's it's an
no, he's
interesting
comparing the technical
connection.
technical work is the
Uh,
is the mathematics. He's saying, not the
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
management
Oh,
is your
okay. Yes,
theory.
yes. Is an art, right? Yeah,
Yeah, it's an art.
yeah.
Okay. One last question on this section about management is: do you think it's right to be an early manager, like at the start of your career, or do you think it's better to, understand the industry, be in tech, and then move to management?
Yo, Abhi.
Yeah, I think it depends. To be honest, I think it doesn't matter. I think I've seen people who are like early managers and have been really successful at their jobs, and some people who have, they have moved to management really late and still struggle a lot. So
Yeah.
I think we have spectrums at both ends. I think it depends on a person's mindset, basically. How he is able to deal with situations.
Okay.
That's my
Okay.
take.
No, I agree. I think it's pretty much it's really what's the person's acumen and interest
Okay.
towards any kind of role. I think management is also if you think of it as a separate role, yeah. I mean, if some people naturally lean towards it very early in their career. Some people are, they have to do this because there's an opportunity in the team, and then they take up the opportunity. And yeah, I mean, there's few people who have gone back. So I've known a couple of people who've been good at management, but now they've gone back to being
Good tech.
individual contributors as well. So,
Okay. All
Francis,
right.
you're one of them.
yes, that is correct.
You were one of them.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
So the next section, actually, I'm calling it difficult or easy. Okay. So let's see how this goes. How difficult or easy is it to convey bad news to your associates?
Difficult.
How difficult or easy is it? How do you handle that? What do you have in mind when you handle that?
Oh, I mean, you have to prepare. You have to really prepare for the meeting. I don't. If it's a difficult conversation, I will not go into the meeting unprepared.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but ultimately, I think uh, the way I approach it is you have to say, you have to convey the message, or you have to have the conversation as early as possible. Like, let's say,
All
for
right.
example, there's a situation that has happened, and
Right.
you that warrants you to have this conversation, right?
Right.
Whether it's been instigated by the employee, or whether there's something that's happened at the management level or anything like that, or at the team level, it's important to talk about it as early as possible.
Mm,
But
it's a good point.
yeah, but otherwise, it's just so difficult. I have my
Yeah.
stomach churning. I might just look at myself in the mirror. Am I looking good? All that doesn't make sense, but it does make sense
Yeah.
internally.
You
So
just hinge on to any hope to make you feel
yes,
better about this
exactly,
conversation. Yeah, I get that.
exactly. And now in the Zoom world, I find myself waiting to click the end meeting. You know, so
Okay. Yeah. Okay. No, I understand. This is difficult. Yes.
yeah. If I can digress a little bit on that,
Yes.
just real quickly, somebody told me that there is a sandwich method. Okay.
Oh,
This is not about difficult conversations. This is about passing on a difficult information or difficult message. So you start the conversation saying, "Hey, Raman, you're really great. What you did in the last quarter was amazing. You closed as many cases. This is really great, man. Keep it up." And then they warm up to you. Raman's, you feel so happy that you're being appreciated by your manager, and you warm up to me. And then once you're warmed up, I say, I just want to talk about this little thing. I heard that the conversation you had with the customer was pretty demanding, but there are some words that you may have used, which I think we shouldn't
okay.
be using in a customer service skills way and all that. And then the person's still feeling good, but then they're still processing the message that you're giving them. And they would probably, you have to give them time to come back to you and all that. But maybe they won't be, they won't be immediately armed with all their defenses and arrows and all that thing to point at you. And then you end the conversation saying, Arman, I think we should do this more. It's been great. Let's have coffee. That day that we went for a coffee, it was amazing. You got a second skill there. You know a lot about coffee. You got to teach me more about that, man. And finish the conversation. So that's the sandwich. So the bread
Okay.
is the good part. The curry is the bad news, and another bread is the good part.
Good part. Okay. Okay.
Anyways, I digress.
Okay. What about you, Abhi?
Okay, taking a cue from Francis, I am going to go with the lasagna approach.
Build
I
the
always,
layers.
yeah. So actually, I just start the conversation with, if I have some bad news, I'll just start with that. Even if it's a team meeting or even individual
Mm.
says I have to give a feedback or any bad news, and it's very difficult, right? It as much as it is difficult for the person to hear those things, it is much more difficult for
Oh
me
yeah.
as a manager to
Yeah.
actually prepare for that entire meeting, because they are only thinking that for like 10-15 minutes that they have to listen from my side, but I had been preparing that for 2 hours, 4 hours from my end.
Or
And that
even a
kind of,
day. Yeah.
yeah, and it just gets crazy because it takes a toll on managers. But I always go with, if I have to say something, I just, tell him that, hey, this is the scenario, and this is how we are going to fix it, or, this is how, or this is absolutely necessary to do. We don't have a choice anymore. And then sort of go to the regular topics that we have. And then sort of at the end, I always reiterate that, hey, remember what we talked about at the start of the call. Please do remember that, that is something you need to take care of. And then
Okay.
sort of finish the call. So that's been my approach, but no, it is not easy at all. It's very
Oh yeah.
difficult.
I get it. I get it.
On the lighter side, I don't want to be, reporting to Abhi, right?
Yeah,
Think about it.
yeah.
You get the bad news. I'm the kind of a guy. I'm really an introvert person. I'm the kind of the guy. I'm not going to listen to all the good things that the manager is going to tell me later.
Yeah.
I'm just going to keep brooding over it. But no, but it's a great approach. And I think,
Yeah. Yeah. The thing
yeah.
is, in your approach, that what I've come to notice in not talking to you, but in general, whenever somebody is telling you something good, okay, and then you use the word but, and then drop the bomb. Anything they said before but doesn't matter. It's
Yeah.
always the second half of that sentence that matters. Right. So, okay.
Yeah.
How difficult or easy is it to convey bad news to your customers? I think this is a skill, probably to convey this to your customers, maybe. So
Uh,
this is not. I don't think it will be as toll taking as it would be, like you mentioned in the previous question. But yeah, but how difficult or easy would it be to give bad news to your customers? Any bad news?
I'm not going to talk about my current organization,
Yeah, of
but
course.
in my previous organization, I've had to give bad news to a customer because there was a project that they were doing on their
Hmm.
end, and the project was almost 35-40% complete, right? And at that time, it came to my desk, and I sort of figured out that this is completely untenable what they are doing, and I had to give that bad news that, okay, what you are doing is not going to work out. And while I was giving that news, the customer he got so angry. I was, with my finding, okay, he just sort of blasted out at me, like, why are you coming to me with this now? All right, I get it. You can stop talking. So it was a really difficult thing to convey, especially bad news at such a point. It just
Yeah.
get, but again, it's a skill I learned from that. I think I thought I could have approached it in a more diluted manner, and then sort of told him, that, okay, this is something that might happen, and then sort of give him news in sort of more breakaway kind of way. But yeah, I think but it is it is difficult, to tell customers that this is not something we are going to do.
Hmm. Okay. Okay. Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
It's not that easy. Anything to add to that,
No,
Francis?
I agree with
And that pretty much sums
Abhi.
it up.
I think
Yeah.
it's pretty much sums it up. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Moving on. How difficult or easy is it to convey bad news to your own superior or higher ups?
You
Same
go do it.
example. This.
Same example. Just change the word customer towards this and replace it with the supervisor, and that's rest everything is same.
Yes.
Okay. Same thing,
I
Francis.
would say, I will, 10 times, 9 times out of 10, I would say, don't do it. It's okay. Don't even start the conversation. But then, you have to, right? Because, if there is some real, it's going to hurt, let's say, the team or the health, the motivation or the organization, you have to say that. Because it's a more, personal thing in the sense because you're going to talk to manager, maybe your manager might be remote,
Yeah.
but still it's not that easy because you're thinking about your own performance reviews and all those things. I mean, irrespective of the fact that you want to convey the message,
Right.
you want to think about, I think it's human tendency to think about the consequences when it comes to your manager, but yeah, I think I agree with Abhi. You have to do this tactfully.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it may not be your
I have.
immediate supervisor, or you're having a meeting with the
Yes.
management and all the higher ups are there, and you
Yes.
have something that is not good. Can be anything.
In that case, you'll always need to have a trusted partner. If it's a management
Mm.
organization, let's say, for example, if it's a, to an extent, you might feel like you're creating a faction because what is a trusted partner at the end of the day? You're trying to show support for yourself. But really, at the end of the day, I think, if you have conviction that this is the right thing, you have to pass on this message. You want to at least, before you go and talk about this in a wider management, forum, you want to at least bounce your idea with another peer to say, hey, what do
Right.
you think about this, right? Because at the end of the day, it's about the fact that whether they go through the same challenge, whether they think also that it will be beneficial to make this known that this is not working, right?
Mhm.
And I think having a trusted partner always helps because they get to know that it's just not you. It's maybe a few people are also feeling that
Correct.
kind of situation.
Correct. Okay.
We had a similar scenario recently where we had to give feedback, that came from the customer to to engineering or whichever partner team that we
The heads and
it
all.
was
Yeah.
supposed to go to.
Yeah.
And but the feedback was so critical that it had to we had to make sure that it goes up to the to the executive level. And I bounced the idea, like Francis mentioned, with my own manager,
Mm.
and I had his agreement to go ahead, and then only we sort of went ahead and gave that feedback. So yes, it does help if you have a trusted partner or someone who can help you to devise a strategy on how to do certain things at higher up,
Yeah.
or
This
at
is
least to validate.
exactly. Yeah. So I think this is one of the most underrated things, or as per me, that having a good manager is a very underrated thing. You don't know the benefits of having a good manager in whom you can actually confide. So, if I recall all my previous organizations, I've had really good managers. I won't talk about my current organization for obvious reasons, but in all my previous organization, I've had the privilege of having good managers. So I would say I was lucky on that part. They would listen to me and appropriately also give me proper critical feedback at the right time. So I've really appreciated that. I think that's, and like you mentioned, you talked to your manager and got his green signal and then you went ahead. That's a great ordeal to have, I believe. Okay. How difficult or easy is it to stay motivated as a manager since you have to keep the morale of your team up?
I think it's like a ebb and flow, like a high tide and a low tide. You will always have, without in order not to sound really pessimistic and not to discourage future managers. I think sometimes it's a thankless job as a manager,
Mm,
but you have to
I believe
find
that.
ways, right? Right.
Yeah, I believe that.
Yeah. So, but you have to find ways to motivate yourself, because I think many times as an individual contributor, you find the motivation from the work that you do, mostly internally, right? But as a manager, you find motivation from the feedback given about you, or the ESAT
Mm,
surveys that come about you, and maybe anything else that you do in the local office and things like that, right? I think, yeah, it's an ebb and flow.
mm,
And I think one of the things I would say as an example is, sometimes when you feel low, I know I'm going into a solutioning mode, but when you feel low, what I have done in the past, and this is something that I've learned from Abhi, is I do things which are not related directly to work. So I will get involved in maybe some some office related stuff, like, let's arrange for a refurbishment of the pantry, or let's just
okay.
do a team outing and stuff like
Oh,
that,
you
right?
need a win
You
to
need
give
a
yourself.
win. Yes, it
Yeah,
may not
correct.
necessarily be directly
Yeah, exactly.
work, but it
Yeah,
will be related to work, right?
right.
So
Okay.
that's what I would say.
Okay. Abhi?
Yes, I think I agree with Francis. I think you have to find your wits. I think it doesn't matter if it's work related. You can do small
Yeah.
things which are which can give you immediate satisfaction that hey, yes, you are important. And it could be like as simple as helping someone to correct the make correct posture when they are sitting, or helping them with a chair, or it can be
Mm,
very simple things which will sort of give you that satisfaction that yes, you are important.
yeah.
But it becomes difficult when you're working from home. uh,
Oh yes. Oh yes.
that's a
Yes.
big challenge.
Yeah, that's a big challenge.
And yeah, and I read somewhere that most if you are motivated, it doesn't take much to just sit and start doing. I think the real mental game is when you are completely demotivated, things going on, and you still do and do your job 100%. I think that's
Mm,
when and it's not for managers alone. It's, I think, everyone, even
right.
engineers who are. I think that's the real mental game. Right? I think that's what we need to overcome
Yeah.
as a
You need to
person.
grind. You need to grind because the result, you won't get the result in midway. You'll get the result at the end of the day. You have to grind till then.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. All right. And how difficult or easy is it to accept constructive criticism or honest feedback from your reportees as as your supervisor? How difficult or easy is it to accept constructive criticism or honest feedback from your reportees? That's the question.
Go, Abhi.
I think um, I have not had that experience,
Mm,
to be honest, but I have had feedback from my manager, and I think it was it. If I feel it's right, I normally accept and say, yeah, I'll course correct. Uh, but there have been feedback which have been given if I don't agree with them, or there are certain aspects that they are not aware, then
mm,
I do accept the feedback and tell them that hey, these are some things that might have led to this, but this is what I will do to course correct. But I do let them know that there are certain other aspects which might have led to this kind of behavior
right. So you
or this
add to their
decision.
perspective. Yeah, you'd add to their perspective.
Yes, yes,
Okay. Okay.
correct, correct. But I don't think any direct has given me. Although I keep saying that hey, if you have any feedback,
Yes.
please do provide. But
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you
nobody
do.
has really come up.
Francis?
That's a good tip, Abhi. But yeah, I think one thing I would say is I've had in my previous uh, job, I've actually had a feedback from one of my direct reports, and it was like a blind side to me because
Oh.
I did not expect that that this person was thinking about me in this way. So let me just paint the situation at a very high level. I was really encouraging this employee to take on more work, right? Take on more responsibilities, and I was in sometimes I was. I was just saying that I was assuming to an extent that this person would be okay to take because the rest of the team
Mm-hmm.
were very willing to take on work. So I assumed that what the team feels is what this individual also feels. But I
Mm-hmm.
never really, maybe I would have asked it on the sidelines, but I've never really asked this person saying, "Hey, are you okay to take on this additional work?" So after a while, this person was taking on the work because I guess that's what the team was doing. So maybe there is peer pressure involved on the putting myself in the shoes of the employee. But in a one-on-one, the employee said, "No, I mean, I never appreciated all the additional work you gave me because, I already have my hands full and you gave me a lot of additional work and I don't know for what because, sometimes I don't, I don't see the value in doing that and things like that." So it took a while for me to accept that, in the sense, maybe
Yeah.
a week or so to accept that I needed at least a weekend. but uh, but then I think it was a valid feedback because
Yeah.
sometimes you assume that what is good for the team is good for the individual too, and
Yeah.
I have to say that we have now gone on to become really good friends now that we are not working at the same company. But even otherwise, it wasn't like it wasn't like parting ways with bad blood or anything like that. But
Yeah.
really, I think it's good. It's I would say you have to accept what has been given to you, and
Right.
but if you think it's not warranted, then uh, you'll have to say what you're going to do as well, or if you don't think that's right, or maybe there's some aspect of you that the person does not know, you tell them.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, accepting it is important, and you have to be always open that at any point you might get a feedback as a
Yes.
manager.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Yeah,
And I think um, so you're talking from the point of view of getting a feedback from your direct associate. So if I always get feedbacks from my manager, so the
yeah,
only thing that I concentrate on is what actual the feedback is, and rather than why is he saying this right now, or who is he to say this right now in this way.
yeah,
If the feedback is actually right, no, then it would immediately make sense. Yeah, I think I could do that better. But let's
yeah,
say, like how you mentioned, if you don't agree, or if the manager sometimes does not see the full picture, then
yeah,
you have the you owe it to yourself to show him the full picture, to show
yeah,
him, okay, this is why this is happening,
yeah,
not the way that you're thinking. Please add this to your list of things that you think, and then probably we can talk about it much later.
yeah.
Okay. All right, I think we are over with this section. So next section is productivity and satisfaction. Okay. I actually had another section, but I'm gonna move that to the last because that's just one question. So we'll talk about productivity and satisfaction. What factors affect your productivity levels as a manager? I think it's true for, it's in generic sense, it's true for everybody who is working, but try to convey this or elaborate this from point of view of a manager. What factors affect your productivity levels?
I think if I can start, I think being motivated, certainly does
Okay.
impact your productivity
Right.
levels. Being understanding clearly what you're expected to do,
Mhm.
you're on a task, or your job overall is also important because to be able to know what is expected of you in clear terms is important. I think the third thing is um, feeling that you're empowered to make some changes, or
Mm.
feeling that by doing this you can make some changes, you have some flexibility. So I
Right.
think empowerment is one thing, flexibility is one thing. I would say both. right? Empowered
Okay.
to make some changes that you have. It's not like you're told to do this. Like you've got blinkers on your eyes, and you're only
Right.
going to do. I don't think that makes people happy about it. But then, if you've got if you're given that flexibility and then if you're empowered, then I think that also help productivity.
Okay.
And then I think at the end of the day, there's other personal aspects of a person that also
Yeah,
comes into
that they weigh
play.
in a lot. Yeah. I
Exactly,
agree.
like how time sensitive you are.
Right.
How do you look at a task and all those aspects of it. But yeah, that's
Okay.
what I would say.
I have a slightly different take on this. I mean, on top of what Francis mentioned, I think big productivity guzzlers in the current any workplace is emails and Slack. Because you
I
are
agree.
constant. Anytime you are thinking of focusing on something, you still have one eye on Slack and email, and the other eye on, and it sort of, I think it's a big guzzler for productivity.
It is.
And I think uh, we should change the way we work, I think. But I think that contributes a lot more in terms of my how I uh, plan my day. So if uh, there is something important that I need to do, I have to make sure that I turn off Slack, I turn off emails, I don't look at them at all, and then just focus like 1 hour or 30 minutes on what I want to do. But as a manager, these are I'm saying productivity guzzlers, but they're also necessary because if a CEO is stuck somewhere in a call and needs my help,
Right.
and I need to be available. And that's why for as a manager, it is very difficult for me to find time outside of my during my working hours to to really focus on something really important, or something that I personally I feel is very important, that I need to do that. And I think that's
Yeah.
something
What
I
you
feel
mentioned,
takes my productivity away.
it does. It does. Because what you mentioned, this is a job description. We can't go any other way without this. We can't take care of our job without these tools. But what you mentioned is exactly the thing that was captured in a book called Deep Work by Carl Newport. If you haven't read it, if when you start reading it, you'll realize, oh my God, this is exactly what's happening to me every day. And I think I need to change. I need to change this. Okay. So if you get time, do read that book. All right. Next question. How do you think a manager helps or can help his associates become more productive?
I think straightforward answer. I think by getting out of the way, to be honest, and
Mm,
giving him the necessary tools. So I've seen managers get really involved sometimes in technical stuff. Giving a lot of suggestions. Hey, can you do this? Can you do that? But I think I my approach has been a little bit different. I ask a question, but I let them. It will not be like too many questions. I don't like that as well. But I just ask one question and then sort of let the technical folks determine how to get over and sort of arrive at a conclusion. But yeah, I think that's something that helps.
okay. All right.
Yeah, I agree with Abhi 100%.
Okay. All right. So I think it's pretty much simple. Just get out
Yeah,
of the way and let your associates do what they need to do.
yeah.
And when they need help, just jump in and help them get this. Okay. How do you deal with an unproductive mindset? There are days, I believe that there will be days, there must have been days that you don't feel productive at all. You just feel like, okay, today I'm going to call in sick and I'm not going to work. But you still show up, you still work, because if you don't, the next day you'll have a worse day than today. So how do you deal with that mindset?
I think that's a little difficult to,
Yeah,
because already you're in an unproductive mindset, and to really
correct.
think about it and get over it. Look, I think at the end of the day, as Abhi was saying, so if you're thinking about unproductive mindset for yourself, you probably have a chance to do something about it. But if it's someone else, let's say, for example, and you can feel in your team, let's say
Mhm.
that they are really really dragging, the day seems to be dragging for them, or they just don't um, want to, they're not so engaged, for example, right?
Right,
uh, I think it's, see, you don't want to give out free lunches to people, because then it becomes a pattern. But then at the end of the day, you have to understand that we are all human. So we just have to, sometimes people have to do what they have to do, as long as the base minimum thing is done. And because the person's already taken an effort to, log into work, because they know
right.
that it's going to pile up the next day, which itself is a great thing,
Right,
right?
right, right.
But for self, I would say, again, it goes back to what we talked about a few questions ago about the grind, right? Because some days
Right.
you have to go with the grind,
Yeah,
and but in the sense that you don't end up creating some kind of a negative dynamic in the team. Like, you
right,
just don't. No, there are some things you can't do, right? Like saying, "Hey,
right,
my work is always difficult. I don't know. It's piling up on stuff like that."
right.
So yeah, I don't know if that
Okay.
answers your question, but this
It
it's a
does, it
little
does.
tricky.
So I think I should have also explained it better. Unproductive mindset, your mindset, and also like you already answered the question, the hidden part, which is the mindset of the team as well. So there are
Yeah.
days when the team is not feeling that productive, or one of your associates is okay, sir. Today I don't want to work. I'm still here, but this is what I'm feeling today. Have you ever had an associate come to you and tell you directly that I really don't want to work today, but I'm still working? I don't know what am I. So have you ever had that kind of conversation with your associates?
I have had.
Yes. Yes.
You did?
And I agree with him that hey, it's the same case for me also.
Before we-
And, but then again, it comes back to, like Francis mentioned, it comes to what we are discussed a few questions ago. That it's that's where the mental strength is, right? I mean, even on days that you are feeling low or down, and you still get up and work. The only difference on those days is if I have to make a presentation or I have to say analyze
Yes.
data, I don't do those things.
Right.
Only like which requires not too much attention from my end, like responding on Slack or
Basic responsibilities.
yeah. Even emails I prefer not to answer on those days because I know it is I don't want it to get deep, I don't want to go deep into that and answer it thoroughly, so I don't answer. Rather, I just send a response that hey, let me get back to you tomorrow, and then I sort of get back on the next day rather than doing the same day. So
Right. So
yeah,
because if I
I
get
think
back
on
to you today, it's not going to be a good response. Right?
yes. So on
Okay. Yeah.
unproductive
That's
days, I prefer not to do things that require deep thinking. Rather, I just just do just basic stuff.
okay. Last question on this. Have you ever had to deal with self doubt as a manager? I think we basically covered it in the beginning somewhere when we were discussing that. But um, like in your peak managerial days, have you ever had to deal with self doubt? In early days, everybody gets it. New role, you obviously have self doubt. But what happens in your peak managerial days? Do you ever have self doubt there?
I think constantly,
Constant.
whether I'm yeah, whether I'm doing the
Okay.
right things. What is the what is the impact that I'm making. Whether the manager, the higher management is noticing me, my work.
Yeah.
Stuff like that is just constant because there is no way to track really, what a manager does on a daily basis. And it all comes down to the things, sort of compilation of things at the end of a quarter or end of a year. and
Okay.
that kind of puts constant pressure to perform or show your performance to a higher level. So yeah, I
Okay.
think it's kind of constant.
Okay. And that's comforting to know
Yeah.
that I'm not the only one.
No, it's very intangible, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
what
it is.
you do is intangible. I think with hopefully in the advances of technology, you can probably start listening to what your manager is thinking, and
Right.
especially in this age of post-COVID and the globalized working, you don't
Yeah.
even get to meet your your higher management. You might spend almost a year or two before you get to meet them.
Yeah.
Some cases, and while I think we need to, I digress, but while I think we need to support the teams in terms of their flexibility, because we are no we have proven that globally, we've proven that you can work now from
Right.
home. But
Right.
then there needs to be a good balance, because at the end of the day, I think the face-to-face interaction, the gestures, and what you do still has a value in the workspace,
Right.
irrespective of what level of seniority and all that. At least on a regular basis and things like that, including your management.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah.
Okay. At the end of your working day, how often do you get the feeling of satisfaction?
Uh, Mostly,
How often?
I
Let's say you
not that.
worked 1 month.
Yeah,
After 1 month, do you
yeah.
think maybe you had a job satisfaction for at least 15 days, or for 20 days, or for complete 30 days, or 0 days?
I would say about half of it.
Half. Half of
Yeah,
it.
I would say about half of it. It's not easy to quantify this, but I would say,
Yeah.
if I were to tell you now, looking back, I would say
Looking
half
back,
of
yeah.
it.
Half of it. Okay.
Half of it. And some that probably is because I'm an optimistic person as well. That half that half may have been 25%, but now when I look back at it, it looks like it's half.
It looks like, yeah, yeah. Okay. All right.
So,
Okay, what about you, Api?
Uh, I don't not as often as Francis, I would say. But mostly, on team meeting days, I feel really good. And
Oh, yeah.
so for example, as a manager, you have some ideas that you want to, bounce off and see, how that works out, and because that's the only real way to actually feel, satisfaction in as a manager. That
Right.
whether your ideas are accepted or not.
Right.
How you're talking to your team is motivated. And I think when I have team meetings, I think those days, Wednesdays are like really, really good for me. But
I I like them too.
other days are, sort of okay, because, and the reason is because, whatever ideas you have, put a lot of effort into, detailing them, and then you share with the management. And there is a good chance that, either somebody has already thought that through, or
Hmm.
has been bounced, or the idea is not good enough, and
Right.
you just get the ideas get down the bin. So I think days like that are really really not great.
Okay.
But yes, I think I love team meetings that we have. So Wednesdays are awesome.
so after Abhi
Right.
has spoken, I want to revise it down to maybe 30%, if I can.
Yes. 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 Of course you can. Okay. So in the interest of time, this is the last section, which I am calling manager's purpose. Okay. So I once heard a manager who was addressing a group of associates. It was not very long ago, but so he said, "Please remember, guys, we are here to serve you and your needs. We are at your disposal to help you get the job done." Okay. This is what the manager said. He was addressing a group of associates. I think there were fairly new associates who also joined, and some seasoned associates as well. So I'll repeat the sentence. Please remember, guys, we are here to serve you and your needs. We are at your disposal to help you get the job done. How true do you think this is? It can be absolutely true. That
One
answer is
hundred
also
percent.
valid. 100% true. Yeah. Okay. What about you, Francis?
No,
Do
I
you
agree.
agree with this?
I've
Yes.
said this as well to team members in the
Oh,
past.
okay, nice.
Yeah,
Okay.
in a different wording, but the essence is still pretty much the
The
same.
message was the same. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Is this mindset common amongst managers in reality? I know you guys have agreed and you're saying 100% true, but do you see this everywhere? You must have had your fair share of managers and your associates. Do you see this everywhere?
In
No.
product companies, in product companies, yes, but in services companies, I've seen that is not the case a lot of
Okay.
time.
Okay.
I think at the end of the day, whether it's a service-based company or product-based, and again, while it might be true,
Yeah.
while I think you're right, you're probably right in this demarcation. Um, I think it becomes challenging these days to keep the culture in a large organization. I think at the end of the day,
Right.
it's about the size of the organization that sometimes decides these things. So when the culture is there, like with about 10 people, and then you get to 50 or you get to 200, it's probably still easy to build that culture when the leadership thinks about this culture and puts a lot of effort in continuing to maintain that culture. But I think typically what happens in the business in the business that the service-based companies do is because they sometimes the aspects of getting business or billing purposes and those take front stage. But if the culture is still kept as front stage, I think in any company,
Hmm.
it has a chance to continue to be a living culture.
Right.
But yes, I agree with you.
So
Yeah, to
I believe. Yeah.
to
Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead, Nobi,
to,
please.
sorry, to that extent, I think even for service companies, it's not like you don't find good managers at all.
Yeah. Yeah. I
That's
was
not
about to
the
say.
case. It's
Right.
just it's more there than it's vice versa. Even in product companies, you will find that kind of managers.
But it
It's
less as
but
compared to how would you
yeah,
see in that
yes, it's
industry.
less compared to yes
Yeah. So
in
I
services
believe that
industry.
if there's a stereotype, something must be true in that. That's why it became a stereotype. That's what I believe.
Yeah.
How important do you think this mindset is? The one we discussed about managers helping and being there at the disposal of their associates. How important do you think this mindset is? So feel free to elaborate as much as you can because this is the last question of our discussion.
Abhi, is it okay if I start?
Yeah,
Yeah, so I think it's absolutely important because we both said it's 100%, right? It's absolutely important because I think at the end of the day, what a manager does is really the intangible aspects of things, right? Keeping the team motivated, keeping having an effective team, making sure that your team continues to feel that they are growing and great ESAT, how your management looks at it, how customers look at you, and all those aspects are at the end of the day, what a manager does is really oiling the wheels from the background in many, many,
Hmm.
many times. So I think
Right.
it's fairly important because at the end of the day, while the managers are a very rare resource, for lack of better word,
Hmm.
ultimately the meat or for lack of better word again, the bread and butter of the organization is on the engineers and the support
Correct.
engineers and all that. So they are directly the people who, in every conversation with the customer,
Right.
make or break the conversation, right? But then,
Right.
if the product is not there, if the engineers are not there, then there's no managers. If you really think about it, so the service mentality has to be there, I think,
Right.
from the
I agree
managers.
with this. Yes. Go Abhi.
totally agree. Yes, totally agree with Francis. I think without that mindset, I think we can't really be a good manager, to be honest, because you can't really give the leverage to engineers without that mindset. You can't equip the engineer to do his best without that mindset either. So unless you have that mindset, you won't be able to get the best out of your directs either. So
Correct.
Yeah.
All right. So that brings us to the end of the discussion. And I'm going to, first of all, thank you so much for giving me your time on a Sunday. I'm going to stop recording now. All right.
Thank you.